It feels, with everything that's going on in the Middle East, kind of mad to be talking about motions in Parliament, but it is quite important what's happening tomorrow because it's the different parties setting out their positions about what they want to see happen in Israel and Gaza. Just heard there David Lammy. What is the difference between the Labour position and the SNP?
I don't, as I understand it, think there's a huge amount of difference between the SNP and the Labour Party at this moment in time. You know, I've been fighting for an immediate ceasefire for very many months now. In November, the Scottish National Party moved a vote in the House of Commons for an immediate ceasefire. We were obviously defeated. Since then, 30,000 people have been killed, 70,000 people injured, and there's 1.4 million people holed up in Rafah at the moment, which is usually home to 170,000 people. And of course, the Israeli government have stated that they are likely to launch an offensive on that area. This is about the Palestinian people, and we've chosen to use our time to try and be a voice for them, a voice for the voiceless. What the Labour Party have came forward with today is almost an echo of our position for an immediate ceasefire. I'm actually really pleased that they've taken that decision. It's taken a long time to get here. They're going to have to explain to people why it's taken them so long to get here. But it's right that we are now in a position where there appears to be agreement between ourselves and the Labour Party that we need an immediate ceasefire.
David Lammy just said that he thinks you should pull your motion and get behind Labour's motion because he would argue that there are some significant differences in it that means that the Labour motion is able to command more support in the House, calling for the immediate return of the hostages, for example.
Well, of course, the only reason that we're having this discussion tonight and the only reason that the UK Parliament is talking about the situation in Gaza is because of the fact that the SNP has chosen to put forward an opposition.
We'll let you do your victory lap, but talking about what is going to happen tomorrow, would you consider pulling your motion and backing the Labour one?
Well, I think if I was to pull an Opposition Day motion, then there wouldn't be an Opposition Day debate. That's the starting point for this. So the fact that we have used our time to do this is allowing and facilitating that debate. And, you know, I'm broadly in agreement with the Labour Party on this now. Both of us want to have an immediate ceasefire. We can both vote for an immediate ceasefire tomorrow, and let's see what votes come forward.
It feels like there's a real possibility that there may be two things that MPs can vote on tomorrow. The SNP position for an immediate ceasefire and the government position, which is for a temporary pause and trying to find a lasting ceasefire. If Labour abstains in that scenario, what would you say to that?
So of course, it has been suggested to me this evening that the Labour amendment will not be taken tomorrow and that we may well end up in a situation where it is just ourselves or the Conservatives. Now, the fact that the Labour Party have came out today and said that they back an immediate ceasefire is in line with our position, where they appear to have difficulties in relation to the term collective punishment. Now, I firmly believe that stopping people from having access to food, to water, to electricity, to medicines, from being unable to leave an area is collective punishment of the Palestinian people for the actions, the abhorrent actions of Hamas. Now, it would be for the Labour Party to explain why they don't believe that that is collective punishment and why they don't therefore want to vote for an immediate ceasefire. Some of these technicalities will be played out tomorrow, but it will be for Keir Starmer to explain his position, because I think it would be untenable for him to say that he backs an immediate ceasefire but not vote for one.
If the motion passes, calling for a ceasefire, when do you expect that ceasefire to begin?
So what I would expect to happen on the back of that is for the UK to use its voice in the United Nations, to join with all those other nations that have already voted in favour in the United Nations for a ceasefire. I would expect us to use our position on the UN Security Council, because we are, of course, a permanent member on the UN Security Council, to make that view clear, and then work with our allies in the United States to try and force the Israeli government to heed those words. We are a key ally of Israel, and our words matter.
It is. I don't want to be flippant about this, because, you know, I do think it matters, right?
It does matter.
We all see what is happening in Gaza. It's heartbreaking. You hear about the offensive planned in Rafah. But at the same time, I guess what the Israelis would say is that a ceasefire, if they down their weapons, if they stop trying to target Hamas terrorists, if they stop trying to get the hostages back, that effectively allows Hamas to regroup, and they just don't believe that what they consider to be a terrorist organisation is just going to stop attacking them.
And I would view them as a terrorist organisation as well. And I think most reasonable people on these aisles would view Hamas as a terrorist organisation. And ultimately, Hamas need to be defeated. But what we are seeing in Israel is the Israeli government acting without any consideration for the civilian population. And that's where
they would disagree with that, wouldn't they?
Well, they're open to disagree with it, but the evidence is there. We've all seen the footage of individuals walking in the street being hit with snipers whilst walking under a white flag, or people being pulled out of cars, children being pulled out of cars that have been targeted by the Israeli Defence Force. And of course, late last year, we've seen the Israeli forces kill some of their own hostages who were seeking to escape from Hamas. The Israeli forces have a lot of responsibility to protect civilians, but they are not doing so. And that is why we need that ceasefire, so that we can then move to a space where we can create a lasting peace in the area.
If we're talking about lasting peace, though, passing a resolution in the Commons might make everyone feel better about themselves, but it's those really difficult negotiations that are going to make the real difference. I just want to read out the US ambassador to the UN. This is Linda Thomas-Greenfield. She's talking about the Algerian resolution at the UN, calling for an immediate ceasefire, but it's similar to yours, right? And she says, while numerous parties engage in sensitive negotiations, this is not the time for the ceasefire resolution which jeopardises these efforts. I mean, there are negotiations going on behind the scenes that you and I know nothing about. Should we not trust those people involved in those negotiations saying, hang on a minute, maybe there is something else going on here?
I think that's actually quite a patronising position for that individual to take. It's as though the public can't have a view that there's a ceasefire because there's discussions happening. And we, of course, are representatives of the public. The public on these aisles fully support an immediate ceasefire, and parliamentarians in that place behind me across the road should be voting to implement an immediate ceasefire as our foreign policy, which we can then engage with our allies to try and put into effect via the Israeli government.
And just finally, Prince William has come out today. He's calling for an end to the fighting as soon as possible. Now, you might agree with him in this instance.
I do. Yeah.
But, as a Republican, do you think it's appropriate for a member of the royal family to be giving his opinion on such a contentious matter?
You know what? I got asked about this earlier because I wasn't actually aware of it before I got asked. I'm actually quite relaxed about what the monarchy do and don't say. I mean, we live in a democratic society. I think even they would respect that. They're entitled to their views. If William wants to talk about protecting civilian life, good on him. If Charles wants to talk, the King wants to talk about protecting the planet, good on him. Why don't we have greater discourse? In fact, you could probably argue that the King and his son are more attuned to public opinion than the Conservative Party are.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Stephen Flynn of the SNP, thank you.